You're watching the Hostile Takeover podcast.
Like, despite what you want to say about capitalism, despite what you want to say about grind and hustle culture, or, you know, like the nihilistic idea, like you don't have to care, it's just about your friends, it all gets back down to the fact that music is hard work, and you have a decision, you have a choice as to how you communicate, how you show up for yourself, how you take care of yourself with others and your craft, and acknowledge that when you're on that road, it's about getting better at connecting. It's about getting better at budgeting. It's about getting better at like making sure you have the right merch for the right people, and get better at creating and performing. So like tour is an extension of whatever you created at home.
Yep.
And
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I don't.
Hey man, how you doing?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
I'm doing good, Brian. Thanks.
Good.
Brian Walker from A Day Without Love, an artist, podcaster, filmmaker. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about what you're doing, and maybe I always like to talk about where you started and what kind of brought you into the musical world, like your early inspirations.
Oh, totally, without a doubt. So yeah, my name's Brian Walker. I'm a touring and recording musician. I'm a podcaster. I've made a number of documentaries. My most recent documentary was a collaborative project called Safe X Sound. Other documentaries were more like YouTube hobby projects, ranging from what's the best cheesesteak in Philadelphia to just like studio documentaries, things like that. My podcast is called Dreams Not Memes. And my music project is called A Day Without Love. However, I have been part of other projects. I'm originally born and raised in Philadelphia. I'm recently new to the greater Boston area, South Shore, however you call it, in Quincy. I just moved here 4 months ago after a breakup where I was living in Western Mass. And I would definitely say my creative journey started in a very unexpected way. What I mean by that is I started playing guitar at 18, but I didn't really have like any ambitions or dreams for it, especially given the fact that I didn't even know how to sing. And I had a songwriting ability via poetry. I've been writing poetry since I was 11, but even then, like, my prose to the paper was meant for me. I wasn't thinking like, I'm going to share this. Other than like, I wrote a poem for crushes, which is very like normal. I wasn't thinking like, one day I want to rap, one day I'm going to sing songs. It just wasn't a thought. I didn't even think I had it in me. And then a former bassist of mine, him and I like got really high on weed and got some pizza, as people who are 18 and 19 typically do. And he goes, "Yo, man, I don't mean to be racist, but I think you could sing." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Dude, all my black friends can sing. You can sing." I was like, "Don't give me that." And then he's just like, "Just sing with me." And then I just did it. I was like, "Oh, shit." And then he wasn't in my band at the time. I didn't have any band. I had nothing. But he was in a band with someone else. And the singer, Karen, was like, "Dude, you should definitely like try to learn how to sing and play guitar." And I was like, "How do you do it?" He's like, "You just do it." Yeah. And then I remember I was like, "What?" And when I hit like the G chord to an E chord, I was like, "Oh, I could do it." Like, it wasn't like a technical thing. And that's kind of like me understanding what some musicians say, like, if you have it, you have it. You just have to discover it.
Yeah.
And that, like, at that age of, I think I was like 18 or 19, that's when things started to like blossom slowly. So like, I didn't call it A Day Without Love yet. I just was a musician. I had multiple band names. Like, there was a time where me and my friend Julian played music and we called ourselves Black Magic. Then we had a singer named Erica who sang with us. But like, none of this was like official, like, "Oh yeah, we're putting this on Bandcamp" or anything like that. Then I transferred colleges and went to Penn State, started this thing called the Songwriters Club. And I think that's where the birth of just me being a live performer started. Because like, again, like A Day Without Love is a word started like my sophomore year of college, but A Day Without Love, the band, didn't really officially start until 2013. So like some people that know me think that I've been doing this for like 16, 17, 20 years. And it's like, well, for starters, don't age me. I'm 34, not 45. And if you are 45, that's okay. I'm just not that old, right? So that's just like not chronologically possible. And secondly, like the term A Day Without Love, that started when I was writing a poetry book called 365 Being Alive. And a woman was being beaten outside my college dorm, and I stopped the occurrence from happening. The authorities came, and like in the midst of stopping it, I found that like both of these people were abusing each other. Like she hit him, he hit her, they cheated on each other. It was just like all types of toxic, textbook, terrible. And I wanted to write a poem about that, and I called it A Day Without Love. So like, yeah, I started the Songwriters Club. My senior year, I booked like 65, 75 shows with a lot of acts that you may have heard of, ranging from Such Gold to Oh Pioneers to Transit to Into It Over It to Icarus the Owl. Like some of these acts no longer exist, some of these acts do exist, but pretty much I got like local acts from Penn State College to open up for a lot of touring acts that still do or don't exist today.
Yeah.
And I sometimes put myself on some of those bills. And again, I still wasn't calling myself A Day Without Love. I like had recorded 2 things for a friend's project, and I said, I guess we should call this A Day Without Love, but I wasn't sticking to it. I would sometimes just be billed as Brian Walker. And during that time, like I learned how to really sing my originals in front of people, how to engage with people. But I got interviewed for this college newspaper, and they asked me, like, do you think you're going to do this the rest of your life? I was like, yeah, if I could afford it. Because like I was scared to tour. I was scared of so much stuff at the time. And like, I was very much an active alcoholic at the time. And I went to grad school. So like me and my instrument, me and my craft was just me in my bedroom, and then I moved into another apartment, and 3 things were happening. I was in a pop band playing bass. Hurricane Sandy happened, and I became homeless temporarily for 19 days.
Jeez.
Couch surfing, bench surfing, the whole 9. And I was playing in Central Park, not Central Park, in Madison Square Garden. I passed out just from exhaustion, and I wake up to this dude about to like urinate on me, and I like got away. He didn't successfully do it, and I cursed him out and ran away. And I was like pissed at myself. And I wrote this song called Wake Up, which is very hard to find on the internet right now. And I got my old bandmate at the time to record it. And it was pretty much like my song to tell myself, like, this shit has to stop. And what I mean by this shit, I mean like the difficulties of like bad things happening to me, accepting what I can't control, striving to be a better person. And that's when I brought A Day Without Love back into the mix and made A Day Without Love to have a double entendre meaning. Like I wanted to be about the struggles of life, but not wallowing self-pity, but more like creating a narrative of hope.
Yeah.
So I did that and wrote Island. And I recorded in Philly with an old friend of mine that I met at an open mic. So like, during those formative years, I was like open mic champion. Like I was hitting open mics left and right in college in Philly, even though like college was 4 hours from Philly. I wasn't really playing house shows. I was scared of that. Wasn't playing bars. I was scared of that. It was just open mics and like, doing what I can. Like I did charity shows like for Haiti, for Japan, all sorts of things. And can't say I like started following, but I definitely made a lot of friends.
Yeah.
And then when Island came out, I had a band. And I remember like one of my first shows, I got into a magazine. I met Brendan Ekstrom of Circus Vibe, who bought one of my records, which is like crazy. I got like starstruck because like Circus Vibe was like my favorite band ever. I was like, what the hell? Like my favorite guitarist is just bought my record and told me I was good. So that happened. Then like 2013 to 2015, I'm playing in basements. I'm playing in Philadelphia. I'm getting magazine placements. I'm getting article placements, and I'm still scared to tour. Then I stopped alcohol. I like went to rehab. I decided to just like change life for a better me. I then became a solo act again because my roster just couldn't tour. They couldn't commit to it.
Yep.
And no shame on them. That happened.
Yeah.
And I think, and then 2015, I did South by Southwest. Then I got signed to Sounds and Tones Records, which was a DIY label based in the Berkshires of Massachusetts. And 2015 to about 2018, I become this road warrior via Megabus because I can't afford a car and I don't have the strategy or bandwidth to actually tour in the way that many people with privilege, I'm just going to say it like it is, with the privilege of a van and like seven friends that won't charge you $50 or $100 a night to tour. So I just did the Megabus thing, literally had my merch, my clothes and everything in a giant guitar bag. Went through a whole bunch of stuff which inspired records such as Diary, Solace, Lost My Grandfather to Cancer, things like that. 2019, I buy a car because like in my non-music career, I'm a little bit more financially stable. Do my first 3 truly regional US but not full US tours. So like I'm playing in Iowa, I'm playing in Kansas, I'm playing in Kentucky, coming from Philadelphia. And I got a documentarian to do a document tour with me, got tour sponsorships with Sheets and all this other stuff. Then we already know what happened in 2020. Don't need to cover that. But 2019 to 2022, well, actually 2021, I recorded the record that like is coming out this fall, A Stranger That You Met Before. And that's when I really think I kind of reawakened myself as an artist. And like, I had to ask myself, like, all right, I've been doing this for some time, made some money, I filed some taxes, I've had my music placed in places. How can I place them in better places? How can I make better friends? How can I like connect with people and have conversations like this? And that's when I like started to move different locations. And last year I did a 43 state tour across about a little under 2 months. And I did other tours outside of that 43 state tour. And coming up, I'm on the biggest music festival I've been a part of other than South by, called Stoop Fest, doing a tour for that. I met you, and someday we're going to talk about Canadian touring.
Heck yeah.
And yeah, like that's kind of like the summary from origins to today. I probably left out like my favorite foods, but you know.
Well, I made a mental note to talk about where the best cheesesteak is for sure.
Oh yeah, I can definitely do that. Yeah.
That's Brian. That's a really a cool story, and I think why we connect the way we did. You know, we met on TikTok of all
Yeah.
places, and then we had a couple brief conversations, and we're talking about touring, like and personally, I'm a huge fan of your work. I think I just stumbled upon you somehow. You're like in my For You page or something. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then, like a couple days later or something, it came up again. I'm like, oh, that's cool too. And then I like flipped over to your page and, started diving in a little bit. I'm just going to say why I'm a fan of you for a second. And just your music like is very non-genre specific. You could throw some genres at it, but there's like definitely some just like, like bass, like roots punk rock, folk punk rock, and then there's like this like cutesy, artsy, like I think like I can't remember. I don't know the director's name, but like I think I told you this, but like in the movie Juno, it has that like cutesy little soundtrack to it. So you have like that, and then the other thing, and I think it's just a great spectrum to be on, and it really showcases your talent and your understanding of different moods and feelings, and it's really refreshing to listen to. I really enjoy it.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate that.
And your story, like let's go back a little bit. I like when you first started, because you mentioned you were scared. You were playing open mics, and then you said you were scared to play bars, and you were scared to do that kind of stuff. What can you break that open a little bit? What's the difference between playing in a bar and playing in an open mic?
Certainly. So at the time, I was scared because bars set expectations. Like you have to sell this many tickets, and if you don't, like, consequences will occur. Typically, those consequences don't exist other than you don't get paid. I was scared of like the pay to play ideal. I was scared of just disappointing people. Um, a lot of people don't think I have anxiety because like I talk about motivation and positivity and sharing my story. I'm vulnerable, but it's like I don't think enough people give me credit to how much I went through to get to where I am today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember like there's this one booker. I don't think he books anymore. He booked me a show at this place called Danger Gallery, and like in the email it said you have to bring 25 people there. And I was like, ain't no way in hell 25 people are gonna show up for me. So then like I ghosted it. Like I used to be a very flaky, very shaky, very codependent, scared person. And that was like a lot of what my fear was because the way shows are set up, they're not really set up for you to succeed. And what I mean by that is like a lot of times these venues are kind of like, all right, in order to get your $100 or $200, you need to bring an unrealistic amount of people. We're not going to do anything about promoting the show. You can send your flyer, but we're probably not going to put it up there. You can email some articles or blogs local, but we're probably not even going to read the article. So then it like at that time I thought I was like defeated, like, oh damn, I suck. And then like didn't have any confidence because I didn't think people liked me. Like I was hyper analytical and hyper aware in the direction of defeat, right? And I think it wasn't until my Island release show where people showed up for me, which was still in 2013, I realized that it's not the bars that make it, it's the people that make it. And I know that sounds like so cliche, but it's more about like, do these locals believe in you? Do you believe in the locals? Did you meet someone or make a friend at an open mic or a show? Will they come out to you? Did you go to the local charity concert? And like, if you were to fast forward to today, I can't tell you how many people are going to show up for me. I don't expect stuff. I've acknowledged that you have to like let go and let God let go or whatever your higher power may be and acknowledge that there are going to be some shows you might play to 200 people. And there's going to be some shows you might only play to one. And I no longer have that fear. I just kind of look at it like any day I get to touch my guitar is a blessing. Everything that happens afterwards, just let it be.
Great attitude. It's a really great attitude. And you're absolutely right about the way that the whole music scene, I don't want to say industry because I feel like a lot of like the like bars and stuff aren't really like in the music industry. It kind of like lies outside and
Yeah.
of it. But yeah, there's little to no support for artists. When like a band, like a bar will book a band and then just expect the band to do all the promotion, all like everything. And it's like, it's impossible to do because one, if it's outside your home market, you don't know anybody. And, it's like that bar that's booking should be the one doing the marketing because they have all that local reach. And it rarely happens that way, and like I found even too when I owned my own, bar and I had a couple partners and I'd be bringing in these like touring acts that weren't from the city I was in. I would promote the hell out of them, like I would do everything I could. I was, on local groups and online like all the time and trying to like get my SEO up and all that stuff and paid ads. And then just when people came into the bar, try to sell the tickets, right? Like it's like, oh, like they say something about the song that's on the radio. I'm like, oh, you might like this artist that we have coming in. And I found that like the the people that I was partnered with weren't on the same level as me where they'd be like someone would just flat out ask them what's coming up and they'd be like, oh, this band, and they're like, oh, what are they, and they're like, oh, they're like, and they wouldn't like talk about it or
Yeah.
they would it's like they didn't even like when I was like, okay, I'm bringing in this artist and I would write up a bio and put it in the poster, like they wouldn't read any of that and know what anything's about, so there's like so often I see that in like the bar scene where it's just like there's little to no support for artists, and it's like a really
Right.
shitty thing.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about what you're working on now, because I think it's really cool that this documentary is a very important documentary. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. So in 2022, I released a documentary that was created in 2019 called Safe and Sound. And it's a documentary that is about the diversity, the equity, the consent and inclusion of DIY art spaces. And originally, I wrote a record called A Stranger That You Met Before that was intended to be the score for that documentary. But then I wrote a different score for the documentary. And it's very homemade. It's directed by someone named Brianna Spouse. And we did a little bit of a documentary local tour across the city of Philadelphia to screen it. I screen it for different college classes and things like that. And now it's just available to be seen on YouTube. And it's pretty much to the intent of the documentary is to show what is DIY culture and why does it maintain itself despite transforming so much. And the focus on like creative diversity as well as safety for marginalized bodies. And while the intent of the documentary for me was really to just highlight why do we do this, a lot of themes were revisited, and that's how it like got reframed to that. And today, I'm starting to release songs from A Stranger That You Met Before. And I just released 4 out of the 15 songs called "Tour Is Not a Road Trip." And
Which is
currently,
a great name for
thank you,
yeah,
thank you.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that name is came from a brainstorm session with Molly Hampton, who's my label and distribution manager of Yermont Records. Because I was going to call the EP "Home is on a Highway," and then Molly goes, "Nah, you're not going to call the EP the name of the song. This is a self-titled release." And I was like, "That's fair." So then I like just wrote a bunch of lists of names, and then Molly and my designer Sarah Johnson, we all got on a call and talked about it, and that's how that got started. So.
Yeah, it's a great name. Like I've been like touring and doing shows for like 22 years now, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's so cool! Like it must be so awesome to go to all these places." And it's like, what places? Like I saw like a green room, a hotel, and like a stage, and that's it. Like,
Yeah, and that's exactly what that. I love that you said that because that's exactly what it's coming to. Because I do have 2 jobs. Like I have a non-music career that pays my bills, and music pays for music. And I needed to call it that name because I think so often when I tour, I'm either with someone who doesn't get it, whether they're a musician or a friend. Like for example, my ex, not going to share too much about her, but she didn't get it when she toured with me. She thought this was a vacation, not a tour. So often people reach out to you because you're not famous and say, "How was your trip? How's your vacation?" And like, I didn't go on my like first real vacation until I was 32, and I haven't gone on my first like quote unquote exotic vacation till last year. And I've had to sacrifice the majority of my 20s and some of my 30s to build a touring career. And that is a risk because that doesn't mean I get to do things like go to Canada or go to Europe or go to Japan like a lot of 20s and 30-year-olds get to do with their friends and significant others, because I decided to like choose this. So like that portion of the record and the EP is to kind of show that like, despite what you want to say about capitalism, despite what you want to say about grind and hustle culture, or like the nihilistic idea, like you don't have to care, it's just about your friends. It all gets back down to the fact that music is hard work, and you have a decision, you have a choice as to how you communicate, how you show up for yourself, how you take care of yourself with others and your craft, and acknowledge that when you're on that road, it's about getting better at connecting. It's about getting better at budgeting. It's about getting better at like making sure you have the right merch for the right people and get better at creating and performing. So like tour is an extension of whatever you created at home.
Yep.
And
That's a good way to look at it.
yeah, I don't think a lot of people see that because I put this into perspective. A lot of people say that like I'm so lucky to be able to say it. It is a blessing, but I think the part that doesn't get noticed is how much work it is.
Yeah. Well, it's a double-edged sword a little bit, right? Because like,
Yeah.
yes, it is a blessing that you get to do something that you love and you're passionate about. But on the
Mhm.
other hand, you're doing that yourself as like your own business. And people just see a show as something fun and they don't see any of the back end of things where it's like, you're, you know, designing the merch and you're ordering the merch and you're budgeting and you're routing tours and you're doing logistics and all
Mhm.
all of this stuff that is a full-time job on top of the full-time job you already have on top of being an artist. And
Mhm.
so many people just don't see that, don't get it. And like, especially when you're on the road, if someone thinks it's a vacation or something, especially if you're touring with somebody who thinks it's a vacation, that's just exhausting because
Yep.
it's like you have so little time in between shows and you just want to rest up or just grab a bite to eat and chill. You're not going to go catch the sights and stuff. It's like,
Correct.
yeah, it's yeah, there's just so much that goes into the music, especially at a DIY level where you're literally doing it all yourself. Maybe you have a little bit of support from some friends and stuff, but there's just so much that goes into it. It's crazy.
Yep. Yep. Totally.
Yeah. Well, I and then can we just talk a little bit more about I just really want to get more of your perspective of this documentary that you've created, and talk about the spaces, and how they either nurture or harm artists. Really love to hear what your thoughts on that are.
Certainly. So I'm going to talk more about the tour because there were things on the level of harm that didn't get captured in the tour. I mean, in the documentary. I'm going to say for that, I think it was like an 18 or 19-day tour. That 19-day tour, two spaces were considered like, I would say, negative or hostile or counterproductive to an artist. One was a straight up dive bar full of genuinely just trashed people. And they weren't engaged. Now, it was actually one of our highest paying gigs, but I think often the interesting part about touring, regardless of what genre of music you're playing or background you have, is acknowledging whether or not you're playing in the right place. So sometimes the money is right, but you're playing in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you're playing in the right place, but the money's not right. And very rarely is the money right and you're playing in the right place. And from an analytical strategic point of view, it comes down to market research. But from a survival and growth perspective, you kind of have to do a mix of all three until you get to a point where you can control your map so that you're making like 500 to 2,000 a night, regardless if you're a solo or like a full band act.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then like the other one, and this is something that I unfortunately still face due to the fact that I play music in a primarily white community. A lot of people hear me and don't look at my social media and my pictures, and they just assume I'm a white person. I can't tell you how many times I've arrived at a venue where like the show got organized via the internet, either through my agent or through myself, and people just go, "Oh yeah, we don't need a bouncer." I'm like, I'm not a bouncer, because like I'm 6 foot and 235, I'm very muscular, but I'm also not a bouncer. I'm a musician, you know. So I get that sometimes, or we didn't even know you were playing, which then isn't so much a race issue, it's a logistics issue. Like these venues generally aren't communicating, or you play a house show and like the roommates don't know, but one person does know that there's a show, which comes down to like poor event planning and poor communication on the
Yeah.
people that are you. So like we didn't really navigate that too hard in the documentary, but there is a section where we talk about inclusion and how like a bartender didn't realize that like I was a day without love and then try to debate that there's no way I could be that person. Um and how like we don't really talk enough about the microaggressions that Black creators specifically go through. Like we always talk about like POC versus Black, because the thing is like other non-white minorities don't go through the same thing as Black people. And I don't like using the word POC because it's derivative of the word colored, which was also used to offend Black people.
Yeah.
There's that. And then the second thing is, I think it's more important to talk about the nuance of intersectionality and those issues, because if you don't talk about that nuance, you create power to continue the microaggressions of other people. Most recently, there was the Trans Day of Visibility, TDOV.
Yeah.
Thing that I like to do when other marginalized people have a day of representation is retweet every time I see a post of that person, especially for TDOV, because if it's a day of visibility, how can I use my platform to make those people more visible in the most literal way? And I don't see other people facing that. And I think the documentary intent was really to inspire others to have those conversations. Like, how do I uplift people that aren't like me in my own community so that people who are underrepresented have a voice? If punk is about making the voiceless have a voice,
Yes.
it can't only be white. It can't only be cis. It can't only be those that are able-bodied. It has to be varied and diverse.
Yeah.
And I just, like, as a Black person, I think there's still so much work to do. So
For sure. Absolutely there is. Yeah, and I've how do you like you've toured all over the place, you know, like it's like the I feel a lot of people who kind of grow up in a city center, right,
mhm.
where there's like a lot of cultural diversity. So like for instance, I grew up in a small town, actually where I'm living now. I lived in the city most of my adult life, and then I moved back to where I grew up. But there's like you almost get into this you know you move to a city and you're you know you hear about all of the like these struggles of other people, and you know you're an ally to them and everything, and then you almost forget, though at least I did, about what's going on like back in my hometown. And then when I moved back to my hometown, it's like it was like because like living in Toronto, for instance, it's like, oh, like everything's pretty damn fine, you know, like we got a lot of like really great business owners who are like all sorts of different representations. And then I moved back to Aurelia, and like it's literally like I'll walk past like a bar, and there's like these two dudes having like the most racist fucking conversation I've ever heard, you know. So can you talk a little bit about like being an artist and like traveling to from like these city centers that are multicultural and accepting and do have these spaces for people to go to like fucking Arkansas or something?
True. Arkansas is actually one of the few states I've only driven through and I haven't played. It's funny you said that. Um, there is something that I would love to share called the blue red rule. This is a theory, but I would say my 6 to 8 years of touring probably proves it's real, right? The blue red rule, I think, only applies to the United States. I don't know what this would look like in Canada or Mexico or Europe or Africa, etc. Is
Sure.
that the bluer the area, the more access there is to art and music. I've noticed, whereas red areas, like more racist or bigoted areas, don't really have music. So when I say don't really have music, I mean original music. I've noticed from a lot of my touring and touring planning, the reddest cities, towns, and states don't have that much music going on. Classic example, the state of Montana is a red state, and it is next to impossible to find a gig in Billings, Montana.
Okay.
Now, while Billings, Montana has music, it's mostly cowboy hat, I rode a horse, let me hear you talk about something problematic, right? And this is just based on 3 years of trying to get a gig in Billings, Montana. And then like a lot of times I'll say, hey, it took me 2 years to confirm one gig. Whereas if I try to book a gig in Birmingham, Alabama, a very blue area in a red state, I'll get a gig immediately. Or Atlanta, a blue area in a red state, I'll get a gig immediately. Now, there's nuances in Atlanta and Birmingham. One, that is part of the Chitlin circuit, which was a very problematic term, you know, in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, because it was the area where a lot of Black musicians were playing, whether it was like classic soul, blues, rock and roll, rockabilly, et cetera, et cetera. And it was the area where like they would segregate the shows. You know, I'm not gonna, you know, share the history of like Black
Yeah.
music
Yeah.
there, but like those areas still maintain their ability to play shows despite being in a red area. And how I often navigate like microaggressions or genuine aggressions is like I put that on faith. I put that on my community in terms of survival. Like I'm not going to hesitate to share this on your platform. I've been shot at on tour, you know.
Fuck.
Um, like I was in Virginia when I was touring. No, I was in Maryland when I was touring via Megabus, and I got brunch before the gig because I was like 3 hours before load-in. And I used to have a DSLR to like preserve my memories. And I was shooting in a park, a public park, not a private park. And a man literally shot a shotgun in the back of my head, and not towards my head, but like behind me, and said, N word, you better get off this area and do not look at me and do not uh, turn around. Just walk towards the direction, shoots the gun again, and said, I want you out of here. And I got out of the park and he shot the gun a third time. And any one of those 3 times, I could have died. You know, I've been pulled over for the cops driving while Black. I've been, you know, had a gun from a police officer on a megabus because someone thought that I stole their iPhone, you know, and it wasn't me, you know. So like I've gone through those things. And that's why I say I put that on faith in my community, because like while I didn't get like the quote unquote pitchfork article, like a day without love survives gun violence and police, still manages to be a musician. Like I don't get those sort of things. I don't put my worth and my trauma on that. You know, in the United States, we sell Black trauma like we sell drugs. But I do acknowledge that my experiences, the fortunate and not fortunate, should be informed and shared to inspire.
Yeah.
And not to monetize. And I don't think of myself like, can't wait till the next scary experience, because I don't want scary experiences. That's part of why I moved to
No,
Boston.
fuck that.
Because I was like I was tired of like the scary stuff in Philadelphia. But really how I cope on it is like just acknowledging that it really is a blessing that I'm still alive and I'm able to keep going, because there were more than one times. Like my first show in Philadelphia, a dude put a gun in my direction and snorted cocaine and called me the N word and asked me to play Jimi Hendrix. You know, and I've shared that multiple times, but like, you know, that bar doesn't exist anymore. So like, and that's also because of hostile situations like the one I just shared. But the reality is like, not everyone gets the positive treatment that other people get, regardless of race, gender, creed, et cetera, et cetera. So it took me a long time to really feel a part of as a musician.
Yeah. So have you, like, as your career's gone on, have you been able to like forge uh like a line of cities where you can like go and like you'd be safe, and like have you found friends in these places, or have you is like, you know, having an experience like that is just like fuck that, I'm not going back to Maryland again?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
So like it's been a massaging. Like, so I love that you say the Maryland thing, because not racing foreign, but I got robbed in Baltimore with my friend Kate.
Yeah.
I swore off Baltimore for a long time, and it wasn't until last year I gave it another chance. So, but keep in mind that was like 5 years that I said no
Yeah.
more Baltimore. And the other thing that feels good today is that in most cities that I play, I have a friend or four where they'll host me and feed me. Like, have I taken the hotel route? Yeah, but like now, I could say in most cities in the United States, I have a multitude of people that I could trust to like make sure that I'm taken care of.
That's great.
So yeah, but that did not happen overnight.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're, at least, I don't want to see you fucking get shot at and shit. So I'm glad you're having some safe spaces to
Yeah.
go to, man. And yeah, that's cool. I like, and two, like, just like as like an artist, like not like like a safety thing. It's just like way better to stay with friends, to have friends around, have that support than just like going to your hotel, being by yourself. It's like I always find like when I'm on tour and like there's like a little bit of a community there, like I find in Canada anyways, like when we go out to the East Coast, it's more like that, where it's like, okay, well, like the the promoter's aunt is like making us lunch and taking care of us and like driving us to work, picking us up from the airport. And but like, in like bigger cities and bigger markets, it's like, all right, well, we're gonna get this like limo company to pick you up from the airport, and then like here's your catered lunch that's like been sitting around for an hour in transit. But yeah, it's like it's just so much better to like have that um sense of community when you go out to a space, as opposed to the alternative, which is like takeout food, hotels, taxi cabs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that adds up.
that too. Yeah, yeah. The cost of things too, for sure. So what's next for you? Tell me, what are you doing?
So creatively, Tours Not a Road Trip isn't even 2 weeks old, and it's almost sold out. Hopefully by the time this airs, it is sold out. There's only 6 copies left. I'm
Nice.
doing a number of spring tours, mostly in the New England area, as well as doing a tour to Stoop Fest, which is in Lansing, Michigan. Then later in the summer, or in the late spring to summer, I'll be touring the South. I have a band now, and I'm also shopping for a string quartet, so I can do some like live video sessions. So
Awesome.
that's going to be happening. Stranger That You Met Before comes out in October. So like between now and October, I'm just going to be doing as many interviews, as many shows as possible, just to get like known as well as possible. And then I would say probably spring of next year, we could start doing some Canada shows, because I don't want to tour in Canada in the dead of winter. I don't think
No,
that's
don't do it, man. But like there's a handoff too, though, right? Like, because like summertime in Canada, people don't want to like be like held up in a like a dank venue. They want to be
yeah,
like on a patio or at a lake.
sure,
So
sure,
like
sure.
they're like shows do well in the winter, but it sucks to travel. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
so it's like there's a little bit of a trade off, I find.
yeah.
But man, I would love to have you up in Canada. I would absolutely love that.
No,
It would be cool to get you some shows and see you play and introduce you to some friends and stuff.
thank you, thank you. And,
Let's chat a little bit about the DIY,
for sure.
because people see a DIY musician, and it's just like the people think it's like it's just like I make an album and like I don't have a label or whatever. But when you look at your entire body of work, like your documentaries, your podcast, your on social media, that is all part of the the art, right? And
Mhm,
it's all, that is all like even if you do it without even thinking about it, it's DIY marketing, right?
mhm.
Um, Chat a little bit about like your strategies and is this something you like actively think about, or is it just something you can it's like, oh, I can do this and kind of tie it in, and just chat a little bit about how you um plan this, because I do find it pretty impressive how you tie all these things in.
Sure. So it's a mixed bag. Like, if I were to be like just brutally honest, like I want to be seen because I generally think I have a desire to do better for communities that look like me. And what I mean by that is like I want Black children to have more access to instruments, and I truly feel like it's a miracle that I was able to have like the ability to play guitar. But I definitely started really late due to the demographic I come from.
Yeah,
So
18 is old to get into music.
yeah,
Like
it
it
really,
is. When you said that, I was like, damn, that was old to get in.
yeah.
Hmm.
I want literacy rates as well as technical literacy rates to be better, right? And at one end, like someone could argue, why didn't you become a politician? I said it's too formal. I'm more of a radical person.
Yeah.
So like there is and is not a strategy in terms of like how I create and do all these things. So like just to talk through the intent, like I did the documentary. Now, while it didn't go out every way that I wanted to plan, that's not going to be the only documentary that I do. Like as I get more resources, I'd like to do other documentaries around arts and music. Like I want to do a food documentary eventually. But like I need to like cross some T's and dot some I's to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Around touring, like if I had the resources again, by resources I mean the money and the community support, I'd probably tour the world. I probably would temporarily quit my non-music career to do that. But my non-music career informs like another one of my goals, which is like to create like a consultancy that helps people do better, right? Because I do consulting. Additionally, like I started the podcast because I didn't want all my content or creations to be only about me. I was like, how can I create something that's not centered around me? So I made the podcast about me interviewing other people and connecting with the world about their ambitions. So Dreams Not Memes, like quite literally, is not a music podcast, and I also want to emphasize that, like, yes, I've interviewed musicians, but quite literally, 70% of the content is me interviewing non-musicians, right?
Yeah.
And so many people say like it's a music podcast. I'm like, no, it's not.
It's a really cool concept for a
Thank you.
podcast. I really
Yeah,
like it.
thank you. But yeah, it's a podcast where I want to interview 1,000 people from every country in the world and ask about their ambitions. And that was informed by another creator called Rob's 10K Friends, who is trying to make 10,000 friends by spending an hour of conversation with them all.
That's
And I
awesome.
said, I want to do that. And I did an interview with him. I was person number 16. And then a college buddy of mine talks about, has another platform called Special Books by Special Kids. And it's a platform that destigmatizes mental illness. So I did one on how music has helped me with anxiety and depression. So I like thought about both of those projects and I was like, how can I do my own version, but make it about ambitions and dreaming? So all these things that I do, like, it's because I have a genuine drive. So it first starts with the drive. And then in terms of strategy, I initially did have a strategy based on like reading all of these social media books. And then I got burnt out because I wasn't getting the results that I want. And while I'm like generally wish I was bigger than what I am, and that's not out of narcissism or ego, it's more about ability. Because like if I had 30,000 followers, then that 10%, 3,000 would be paying customers, which would then allow me to work less to be able to move forward more. Like just straight candidly, like I wish I had that. But I also recognize that a lot of this is out of my control. So like I don't think I could strategize growth. So I thought, so how could I re-strategize and discipline myself to create? So what I do is every 2 to 4 weeks, I change what I'm putting like out there, while still remaining consistent by putting myself out there. And I do that in the same way that anime kind of like becomes known by continually putting in content, and people create this like image that might not match the image of self. So like some people see me as the foodie guy. Some people see me as the interview guy. Some people see me as the music guy. Some people see me as like the only black guy in folk punk that's like actually touring a lot, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, that's not entirely true. I'm just the most prolific. All these things are me, but I think very few people see all of it at once because that's how the algorithm is.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's kind of like how I think about how I put myself out there. So I hope I'll answer that question. So
yeah, I've actually chatted about this on the podcast a couple times with a couple different people, and just getting, people pigeonhole you. They see you as something, and they just can't imagine, or they don't have the bandwidth, or they don't know you deeply enough to see all of these different things that you're doing. And so if somebody sees you doing something, they're like, oh, they're that. And then, like, and especially, like, it's interesting you brought up the algorithm, because it that's 1,000% how social media is designed.
mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like that you said pigeonhole. And there was a time I used to resent that, but now I've just accepted it, which is why I choose to just not be all over the place, but like slowly shift a little bit each time. So like, for the next 12 to 15 weeks, I'm pretty much just only focusing on this album, right? But I'm going to do it in different ways every so many weeks, right? But I also have to acknowledge that there are some songs that I have that people know me for, but they won't listen to my own entire catalog.
Yeah.
And there was a time in my life where I said they're only a true fan if they listen to all my songs. But like now, as a listener, that's just not real. I don't listen to all of Radiohead songs. I don't listen to all of Tyler the Creator songs.
Yeah.
I don't listen to all of Kylie Yukas' songs. And the same thing has to apply to me.
Yeah.
Like I can't expect people to know all of me. Even in my dating life. I know this isn't a dating podcast, but like when I meet someone and she's like, I really like your music. I want to be all about it. I want to be about everything you've created. Like, you want to be about everything I've created? You have 600 hours? Because I've created 600 hours worth of content. And not only, like, it's all in my head, but I do not expect that of you.
Yeah.
Because if I did, I'd be a textbook narcissist. That's just crazy. like, you know what I mean? So that's when I've like learned to let go of like the fact that some people are going to spend the 600 hours. Like, I've watched every episode of Naruto and Naruto Shippuden, but I won't commit to One Piece. And people laugh at me about that all the time. I don't know if you're into anime, but some people are.
I'm not. I don't know like this much anime.
It's about 900 episodes. Like in the entire Naruto franchise, I've watched like almost all the 900 episodes. That's crazy, right?
That's crazy. That's a lot of time.
Yeah,
I've done that with like video games. Like there's like certain video game series that I've dumped more time in than I care to share.
Yeah. And I think that's what it really means. I know that's not completely on topic. What it means to fall in love with creating, because there is a part for all of us. Like, I wish I got that million views, or I wish I got like that grant or whatever to survive. That's like the means to production. But at the same time, you have to let go of the reality that you just got to tell the story. You just got to put out the song, because 1 or 2 or 10 of them are going to catch on. But being able to continue to create arcs about yourself kind of tells that story. Like, at the beginning of this interview, you just made me realize, like, damn, I've done a lot of shit.
You have.
You said
it's damn impressive, man.
Yeah, I really appreciate it for that. So
yeah, like I don't know, man. I think this is like when this airs, I think this will be episode like 11 or 12. And like, what are you on your podcast? You're like 300 and something.
329, and I just met someone who's going to be 330, and they're from Uzbekistan, and I actually have to message them today, because that was like list of countries of like, I don't know how the hell I'm going to find someone from those countries. But then like,
have you done Turkmenistan yet?
No.
Okay, I've spent like almost a year in Turkmenistan, and I met some really interesting people. I wanted to share that with you. Message me about that.
Sure,
yeah. Because that'd be cool, because it was a really interesting country with a lot of. It was just an interesting country. But so the And I want to talk about one more thing because you brought it up a couple times. Is like anxiety and that and you mentioned that people don't believe you have anxiety. And I think it's really important to talk about um, p- people talk about anxiety and it's like it's something that just like kind of keeps you from doing things and being your best self. And so they see somebody who's maybe very creative or is very good at their job, or they have like a certain talent and they put it out there. But there I think it's two part where one, just for that person to get to that point was a giant struggle, and then two is like maintaining that but still always having the anxiety that comes up in some form in your life no matter what. It's like just a constant thing you live with. um so tell me a little bit about like your uh how you've kind of overcome that, how you kind of pushed through and got to where you are now.
Thank you. I think there's like layers to it. I mean, some days I still feel like I'm overcoming.
Yeah.
No, but I'm glad that
Well,
you
that's the
brought up
thing.
this.
It's always a constant thing,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought that up. I think there are like three big things that like helped me overcome. One, it was like having a routine and getting sober. You know what I mean? There's many ways to get sober, but however you do it, get sober. Because I think getting sober, like literally control alt deleted and yeeted so many things about myself that I thought was real. Like I thought I was too ugly to sing in front of people, you know. I thought the quote Earl Sweatshirt, I was really a big fan of that, like too black for the white kids and too white for the black kids type of mentality.
Yeah.
There was just like so many fears I had, and like getting sober like erased a lot of that. Secondly, experience. You have to be patient with yourself enough to know, don't be mad at yourself for things that didn't happen yet, but also give yourself the gratitude from how far you've gotten each day. Like today, I'm going to post about this. I just had my first interview with someone based in Canada. I've interviewed Canadians out the wazoo for my podcast, but no one from Canada has ever interviewed me about my music and my platform and the things I believe in.
Cool.
To me, that's awesome. Like I'm going to tell my grandma, like hype yourself up, because there's going to be so many good and bad things that happen to you. But if you don't give yourself the room to hype yourself up, you're going to always be fighting with yourself. So love yourself instead of fighting yourself. And I would say three, the other thing that keeps me grounded and acknowledging is everybody's worried about something. They just won't tell you. And I don't have
Yeah.
to tell her. Like yesterday, I was a little feared up. I went to this open mic. I still go to open mics despite how much I play shows and travel. And I thought it was just like an open mic for people in their 20s and 30s. And I found out it was a Berkeley open mic. And I was like, I am definitely the oldest person here. This is sick, right? And there was a part of me like that said, run, go away. You got to go to the gym and get your groceries. But I stayed and I tuned my guitar. And this kid comes up to me and goes, dude, I love Taylor guitars. I was like, oh, do you have one? You're like, yeah, I forgot mine. Do you know any covers? I was like, I'm not really a cover musician, but like I could play like most genres. What do you do? They're like, I do neo soul. And I was like, all right, I'll improv like a jazz progression for you. He's like, all right, bet. I played for him and he sang and people loved it. The whole room was dancing. And like that's what I mean by the experience and just trusting yourself. That created a new connection. And then they said like, hey, I usually use MIDI guitars, even though I play guitar. I'm gonna hit you up for a session and I'll be paid. So it's that. And then I played my own set. And it turned out that the owner of the venue was a cello player who just played with Sutter Silverman last week. And I was like, if you need a
Is that your
quartet,
string band?
that's what I'm gonna try. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But I literally messaged him today to see, can this be my string band? Because like I want to have like a quartet for special occasions and like content and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
Because it is hard to do. I mean, even Matt Miller struggled and then did that whole NPR thing with 2009. But like, I really think being able to take the leap of faith or risks allowed me to manage that anxiety. Today, I just need to get better at yoga and meditation. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's been something I've struggled with my whole life too. It's like, like honestly, man, I was like this close to fucking messaging you today and being like, I can't do this thing. It's like I was like, I don't know him. I've only interviewed one person that I didn't know before, and it was like one of the first couple episodes, and I just didn't like. I reached out to all my friends, and a few got back to me if you could do it in the future. So I kind of had to go with somebody who I didn't know, and I was like so nervous, and it was a brand new thing. I wasn't used to this format, and it was like, kind of not a bad podcast, but it wasn't like where I'm at now, and I'm
Sure.
a lot more comfortable. But I was like, I had those voices in my head, man. It was like, this is going to be shit. Like, you like talking to somebody you don't know. What are you going to talk about? And I was just like, should I cancel? And thank God thank God I did it. But it's just a constant struggle, and people see me do like big events and things like that, and it's a constant struggle to like just keep up with that, and just like being worthy of being there, like it's but it's cool to chat with other people who are successful, and it's very inspiring. I find a lot of the times, like that when I talk about it with people who kind of are in a recovery, or just like self improvement phase of their life, it's always super inspiring to see, to watch, and then to watch your friends grow too.
Thank you. And I'm glad that we're here. So
Me too. It's been great to meet you. Honestly, I fucking hate TikTok, man, and it's cool to like connect with somebody, on a deeper level than I connect with most people on TikTok. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. We're getting up over an hour though, so I'll probably cut it off here. But thank you again, and let's keep chatting, and I can't wait to meet you in person when you come to Canada with your string band.
Anytime.
All right, Brian. Thanks again.
Thank you.
You're watching the Hostile Takeover podcast.